Hey there, howdy ho. All right, lesson for the day is lesson 70. But before we start, check out these lilies, huh? It's like as big as my head. Love it. The Course in Miracles says you can give your gift of lilies or thorns to your brother, the gift of forgiveness or attack. But think wisely, because what you give to him, you give to yourself. Seems apropos. So today's lesson is my salvation comes from me. Salvation is a really big word. If you're anything like me with a religious background, it's like, I don't know what I think salvation is, but it's like you're going to turn into a ball of light and float into space or something. So for this, I like to think of it as mental freedom. Okay, so it says all temptation is nothing more than some form of the basic temptation not to believe the idea for today. Temptation is another big word. So really, I think it's like distraction is kind of how I think of it. So really, my mental freedom comes from me. No. And it says all distraction really is nothing more than some form of the basic temptation not to believe the idea for today. Salvation seems to come from anywhere except from you. When you change it to mental freedom, it gets a little more logical. So too does the source of guilt. You see neither guilt nor salvation as in your own mind and nowhere else. When you realize that all guilt is solely an invention of your mind, you also realize that guilt and salvation must be in the same place. Guilt and mental freedom. Now, the important key here is when you can start to shift into the idea that this is a dream world, if you will, or a world of thought. It's hard to think of yourself as an idea when you're physical, obviously, but every real great old religious thought process has talked about this reality being a dream. I mean, the oldest one, the Hindu, is, this is Leela and Maya, which is a dance of God in the world of illusion, where God continues to forget who he is and just rediscovers himself all the time, or herself, whatever you want to call it. And then when you get down to the science of it, that they've discovered that we're all vibration. And I'm mostly space. I'm just electrons and atoms circulating around, and they really can't figure a lot of that out. What makes it move? What makes it stick together? I mean, obviously you've got sort of magnetic power, but it's really my senses that are translating everything into being solid. It makes a lot more sense, and I'm surprised we don't have that conversation more, that this is some type of illusory imagination world. It's like a Sherlock Holmes episode where people are studying, trying to figure out, isn't this real? And it's like, no, we continue to find out that everyone's just made of space. If it was a real physical environment, we'd be made out of some kind of physical goo. Truly, I'd be solid, I'd be physical, but I'm not. I only appear physical. So when you start to realize that, well, if it's a dream world, then it makes a lot of sense why my mind would be creating the environment. And we do that in our dreams. We're well aware of that. The condition in my mind, it's coming from my mind. We don't find that difficult to grasp. So really what we're living in here is an individual mind that's projecting out and creating your experience and your reality. Hinduism talks about it, Buddhism talks about it, Abraham Hicks and Esther talk about it all the time, that your mind creates your reality, and this is all vibration. It doesn't get into the dream conversation, but that's obviously what's hinted at. And then you've got the collective mind, which is the collective dream that's happening. That's how we have no private thoughts. And it's creating. And then you've got God's mind, which is really the ultimate creation, creating the true reality. We're just kind of having our own nightmares here. So when I begin to realize that that's the case, it would make sense that the power to heal my mind is in my own mind, and that guilt is just an invention of my mind. And I really got this in the meditation today. And I really experienced people being freed from guilt and seeing how it was made up. And it was so powerful. I started crying. It was so beautiful. I've studied this material for a while. I've not had meditations that are as powerful as mine have been the last few days in really getting to the light in the world in me. And I'm so excited about it. So excited. And you being here is a key component of that, because I'm not dreaming alone. Okay, so you need to see, when you realize that all guilt is solely an invention of your mind, and when you think about it, before I go on, we can see how guilt is instilled in us as kids, right? It's almost like we think someone's supposed to feel bad. Like if you do something wrong, you're supposed to feel bad. Because we don't understand our minds are creative, we don't realize we're instilling the idea of punishment, penance, and so we don't realize we're actually inventing guilt in that process. And it's not our parents' fault. It's not their parents' fault. This has been going on a long time. Obviously, it's part of the human condition. But this is where we can heal it. So when you realize that it's an invention of your mind, you realize that guilt and mental freedom must be in the same place. It makes sense. Salvation. So in understanding this, you're saved. The seeming cost of accepting today's idea is this: it means that nothing outside yourself can save you. Not Jesus, not God, not stuff, not a relationship, not a new job, nothing like that. Not other people approving of you or telling you that you look good. But it also means that nothing outside yourself can hurt you or disturb your peace or upset you in any way, which is such a relief. It's our choice to give our peace and freedom away. I was feeling so amazing this morning. Then something happened. I got all annoyed. And I could feel it. I could feel me letting my peace slip away, making them guilty, getting vengeful in my thoughts. And I mean, those are dramatic language, using the language of the Course, but I'm able to be aware now of what's happening because I feel guilty about it and I'm projecting it out. Today's idea places you in charge of the universe, where you belong because of what you are. This is not a role that can be partially accepted, and you must surely begin to see that accepting it is salvation. Now that sounds really big, I'm in charge of the universe, but if you think this is your dream, and you're in a dream world, which even the Four Agreements even talks about that, you'll see that it's not that weird. You know you're in charge of your dream world universe. Why wouldn't you be in charge of this one if it's the same kind of thing? Not as a sleeping dream, but it may not, however, be clear to you why the recognition that guilt is in your own mind entails the realization that salvation is there as well. God would not have put the remedy for sickness where it cannot help. That is the way your mind has worked, but hardly his. He wants you to be healed, so he has kept the source of healing where the need for healing lies. You've tried to do just the opposite, making every attempt, however distorted and fantastic it might be, to separate healing from sickness for which it was intended and thus keep the sickness. And I think we can really see this in our culture at this point. If medicine and our medical system and surgery fix sickness, we would be the healthiest people in the world, the healthiest, happiest people in the world. But all we do is have more diseases and more sickness. It's very clear that whatever we're doing to treat sickness is causing more sickness, not more health. Your purpose was to ensure that healing did not occur. We're being successful at that, aren't we? God's purpose was to ensure that it did. Today we practice realizing that God's will and ours are really the same in this. God wants us to be healed, and we do not really want to be sick because it makes us unhappy. Hell yeah. Therefore, in accepting the idea for today, we are really in agreement with God. He does not want us to be sick. Neither do we. He wants us to be healed. So do we. We are ready for 2 longer practice periods today, each of which should last some 10 to 15 minutes. We will, however, still let you decide when to undertake them. We will follow this practice for a number of lessons, and would it again be well to decide in advance when would be a good time to lay aside for each of them, and then adhering to your own decisions as closely as possible. I already did one, and it was magnificent. Begin these practice periods by repeating the idea for today, adding a statement signifying your recognition that salvation comes from nothing outside of you. You might put it this way: my salvation comes from me. It cannot come from anywhere else. My mental freedom comes from me. Can't come from anyone else. Makes sense, it's in my mind. Then devote a few minutes with your eyes closed to reviewing some of the external places where you've looked for salvation in the past. In other people and possessions and various situations and events and in self-concepts that you sought to make real. Not chase that pony out. I am well aware that it's all fleeting and not very satisfying and doesn't give me what I'm looking for. Recognize that it is not there and tell yourself, my salvation cannot come from any of these things. My salvation comes from me and only me. And that's interesting. So many people want to look to Jesus for salvation. It's like Jesus looked to himself for salvation and it worked. So maybe we should follow what he was doing rather than making him an idol and an unachievable. Now we will try again to reach the light in you, which is where your salvation is. You cannot find it in the clouds that surround the light, and it is them that you've been looking for it. It is not there. It is past the clouds and in the light beyond. Remember that you will have to go through the clouds before you can reach the light. But remember also that you've never found anything in the cloud patterns you imagined that endured or that you wanted. I thought I would, and I didn't. Since all illusions of salvation have failed you, surely you do not want to remain in the clouds looking vainly for idols there. things to worship. Idols is another big word. It's just, things to distract yourself and worship. When you could so easily walk on into the light of real salvation. Try to pass the clouds by whatever means appeals to you. If it helps you, think of me holding your hand and leading you. I did, and it worked. And I assure you this will be no idle fantasy. Thanks to my brother for being there with me today. For the short and frequent practice periods today, remind yourself that your salvation comes from you, and nothing but your own thoughts can hamper your progress. You are free from all external interference. You are in charge of your salvation. You are in charge of the salvation of the world. Call it your world. Say then, my salvation comes from me. Nothing outside of me can hold me back. Within me is the world's salvation and my own. My dream world. Heal my mind, heal the world. It's not that illogical when you put it in that context. And I love that it says, nothing but your own thoughts can hamper your progress. So just focusing in before your meditation, I used a little bit from yesterday, just saying to myself, I know I can do this. This is what I'm asking for. This is going to happen. It's a sure thing. And yesterday's meditation was so powerful. Today was so powerful. And I hope you have the same experience. So be well, and we'll talk again soon.